Has Hunter Renfroe suddenly caught fire? We'll tell you about it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we are on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me, well, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some producing, some hosting, and some co-hosting as well. So I stay pretty busy in the sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Now that the Royals finished up in Cleveland, they're going to be headed back home for a 7-game homestand against the Seattle Mariners and the New York Yankees. So if you're thinking about buying tickets, certainly do so over at Game Time. As I just mentioned, the Royals wrapped up this afternoon in Cleveland. Because of the rain out last night, all they had to do was play 2 against the Guardians. And unlike their showing on Tuesday night, today was a much different story. They should have lost that game. I am convinced many Royals teams before this one would lose a very similar game like this in Cleveland, where even if you're trailing by 1 or 2 runs, you fail to cash in one inning where you did tie it up, but you should have taken the lead. It just always felt like Jose Ramirez or Josh Naylor, or in the old days, Francisco Lindor. And I say the old days, that wasn't that long ago, but being a Royal killer, Carlos Santana, you go back further than that, Travis Hafner, Albert Bell, somebody. Jim Thome, of course, that's probably the most notorious Royals killer in a Cleveland uniform. Just guys that were going to hit one 460 feet to break the tie in the 8th or the 9th inning, and that would have been all she wrote. And this is the reality of a baseball season, that there are going to be more than a few occasions that you don't play your best ball. And then one day you catch fire, you get out to a 5-0 lead, and because of the bad ball you've been playing, you cough up that lead. There's also going to be times where you're going so well that you have a bad start to a game, but you find a way to win that. And sometimes the difference between a playoff team and a non-playoff team is how you can respond to bad play, a bad stretch of games, when you open up a game not playing well. And I didn't think the Royals opened up this game playing that well. Brady Singer was not good in this game. The defense was not good. And even though the Royals jumped out to a 1-0 lead, kind of gifted by bad defense on Cleveland's part. But they find a way to win. The bullpen, which we have talked about countless times on the show, 5 1/3 hitless innings for Kansas City today as they win 4-3. And they are certainly the talking point today. I think they are a group that deserves their praise. But one guy that absolutely deserves some praise of late would be Hunter Renfroe. And with the way the Royals outfield has been, offensively speaking, it's been hard to spin anything in a good light of, hey, things are turning around for this guy. Kyle Isbell's defense, so MJ Melendez is defense. But Hunter Renfroe has been one of the 3, and the only one in the group that has shown a stretch of play that is worth taking note on. Not just 3 good games in a row. Hunter Renfroe's been good for almost a month now. And if you don't believe me, just go look at some of the numbers. Since May 10th, so I know it's June 6th right now. Since May 10th, Hunter Renfroe's on-base percentage is right under 350. His OPS is just north of 830. He has been on base in every game that he's started since May 15th. You have to go back to that Seattle series. That's the last time Hunter Renfroe started a game and did not get on base. Now, the overall numbers are not going to pop to you. They're just not going to. He's still hitting 189. But that 189 is 43 points higher since May 10th. Power's not really there yet, but the walk rate's going up, and he's looking like more of a professional hitter. And at times, this is why in baseball, you can't knee-jerk. And I'm not saying Hunter Renfroe is all of a sudden great now, but it's why at times we can't knee-jerk to just pulling the plug on guys, of just cutting guys outright. Because sometimes, even if they're not going to be good long-term, you hope for stretches like this, where you don't overreact, cut that player, put somebody else out there, and maybe they're even worse than that player. It would have been pretty hard to be worse than any of the three outfielders the Royals had. In fact, nobody in baseball was struggling more with their outfielders. But Hunter Renfroe is on a 2-year deal. And it never really had that feel that the Royals were going to make the decision to pull the plug 50 games into the season. And they could have. They would have had the numbers to back it up. Hey, he's hitting 140 with no power. And he's not getting on base that much. But a stretch like this, going into the warmer months, June, July, August, it's welcome for sure because the Royals need production at the bottom of the order, and really no outfielder on the team has had a stretch like this. Not Nelson Velasquez, not Melendez, not Isbell. This is about a month long. And even if this is the best month that Hunter Renfroe gives you, it's important. It really is important because in this gauntlet the Royals have gone through, they needed one of those guys to step up and play better, at least at the plate. And for Renfroe, man, however long this lasts, maybe you get to the end of June and he's still got an OPS north of 800, but 15 to 20 game sample size, he's been much better. And early on in the season, there were some things that you could have taken and said, well, how is this all coming together now? One, I think that Hunter Renfroe, even though he wasn't great last year, was never going to be that bad, was never going to be a hitter that was hitting 140 or 130. That just wasn't going to compute. The fall off couldn't have been that drastic. Now, the power numbers, still waiting for that to come around. But as long as he's getting on base, I can't really complain. I know that sounds like Brad Pitt, Billy Beane and Moneyball. Just, do I care if it's a walk or a hit? I do not. And with Renfroe and with any of the outfielders, I do not care. Because that's what the production has been like. If you have a 350 on-base percentage over the course of a month, I will take that 20 times over. And if you had a 320 on-base percentage over the course of a month, I'd be taking it. But this is a welcomed improvement because one of these outfielders had to be giving more than what they were giving the Royals. It had to change. And Melendez, we saw today, he's changed his stance pretty drastically. He didn't get a hit today, but he did have this acrobatic hurdle over a Bo Naylor to tie the game. He was originally called out, but it was overturned. A very athletic play from Melendez. He worked a walk in that inning. He worked the count a few times. He's still not getting hits. But we've seen him willing to make that adjustment. And last year, we saw that as well. He made the adjustment in the second half. Numbers certainly improved. With Renfroe, probably being a veteran, he didn't need to change his stance. He didn't need to change his hand placement. But maybe he just needed to see a couple games in a row where he was getting on base once or twice. Remember that Tampa Bay series, he really started to look like he was turning the corner. Walked 3 times that one game. And again, even if they're just singles, he goes 1 for 4 with a single. He's on base once. And that's all you can ask for when a guy was hitting 140, right? If Hunter Renfroe can carry this into the homestand and into next weekend when they take on the Dodgers, man, what a time to have your best month of the season because this has been the toughest month the Royals have gone through all season long. I'm not saying it's sustainable. I'm not going to say it's sustainable. But it's something to keep an eye on. I put this out on Twitter this afternoon, and I said, should we talk a little bit about Hunter Renfroe? And I still had people in the comments going, no, God, no. He's still terrible. Well, overall, yes. If you just took his baseball card or looked on MLB.com or Baseball Reference or Fangraphs, 189 ain't going to move the needle. But if you just simplified it a little bit, you shortened it a little bit, you would see that over this last month, he's been a good hitter. He's been an above average hitter, I guess some would say. His walk rate is much better. He's hitting the ball a little bit harder. And I think now when I see Hunter Renfroe at the plate, I'm not expecting what I saw back in April when he was striking out on 4 pitches. It's going to happen from time to time. He's a strikeout hitter. Big power, big strikeout, big walk. And you're seeing that walk rate really start to outweigh the strikeout rate. Now, the power starts to get tapped into man, then you could really start feeling much better about Hunter Renfroe. But for now, this is what you take. Walker hit doesn't matter. 350 on-base percentage and an OPS of 831 since May 10th is absolutely good enough for a guy like Hunter Renfroe. I'll take it 10 out of 10 times. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, they are halfway through the gauntlet. Their first 3 brutal series are now done. They faced Minnesota. They faced the Padres. They faced Cleveland. Up next, they're going to get Seattle, New York, and LA. We'll talk about it all next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to tell you about a few of our sponsors today, but we're going to start it off with PrizePicks. Now, with PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections. Additionally, with that, they're going to have you covered every single week, from lowering select player stat projections to on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have losing lineups on Fridays. The finals also means more on PrizePicks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball players that you won't find anywhere else. You can now win up to 100 times your money with baseball-only lineups as well on PrizePicks. If you submit a winning lineup featuring 4 Demon Squares, you'll cash in big time on the biggest moments on baseball's early season. Now, this is also optional for June. There's always action on PrizePicks, and this is the perfect time to try out something new as basketball is winding down. Make sure to try out esports this month, because for every Wednesday and Saturday in June, if your lineup doesn't win, you'll get more entry fee back. Choose from Counter-Strike 2, Call of Duty, League of Legends, and much, much more. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDINMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. We also want to let you know about one of the local sponsors today in PXG Golf. I got fitted 2 weeks ago, right before we started doing some of the reads here for PXG Golf, and they are so helpful. They are easy to work with. It's fun. You get to use the TrackMan, which is what the pros use when trying to get their launch angle, if you will, the ball velocity, the swing speed, the distance. They even have spin rates on that stuff of how your ball is going to be coming off the driver. I got fitted for my long game, and it was great over there. Probably next time I'm going to get fitted for my short game, because that's where I seem to struggle a lot. But if you are thinking of doing so, it's very simple. You can set it up. It's about 40 minutes long, and we're going to have a deal for you. So at pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals, you can schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City at 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals, and the limit is 1 dozen golf balls per person. This promotion ends on June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. You can see their store for details. As I mentioned before the break, the Royals are halfway through this 6-series gauntlet that we began talking about last Monday, I think it was. It was Memorial Day, and the Royals were just beginning this toughest stretch of the season. They were taking on Minnesota. Alec Marsh had gotten bombed in that game. He did go 7 innings, but he got bombed in that game. And it was a time to kind of take a deep breath, prepare yourself, buckle in, strap in, whatever you want to say, and prepare for a Royals team to get roughed up a little bit. And I would say through those first 3 series, they've gotten roughed up. They've only taken 1 game in all 3 of those series. They lost 3 of 4 in Minnesota, so they were 1-3 after that. They took 1 of 3 from San Diego, so they were 2-5. But then they just split, which puts them at 3-6, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 3-6 through these first 9 games. Now they're going to have a 7-game homestand, and then they're going to have 3 on the road in LA against the Dodgers. So that is 10 more games, a 19-game stretch, but the Royals are 11 games over 500. So you can compartmentalize this and go through 9 games. Not good. You're not going to be parading around a 3-6 record, but it's all about treading water. You've heard me say that phrase so many times. since taking over as the podcast host, or at least for this year. You tread water, you're going to be fine. If the Royals over these next 10 games go 5-5, okay, they will be 8-14. Wait, am I getting my math right here? So the next 10 games, if they went 5-5, that would put them at 8-11. I don't know why I said 8-14. I think I was thinking 3-9 after the 9 game. So 8-11. I would take that 100 times over, because 8-11 isn't going to really do anything to the standings. If you go 500 over these next 10 games, you're done with this awful stretch. You will not see the Dodgers again. You won't see the Yankees until later in the season. You won't see Seattle again. You'll get them 3 times at Kansas City this weekend, and that'll be it. Okay, you don't see Minnesota till August. You don't see the Padres again. Have to feel pretty good if you're 11 games over 500 entering the latter portions of June. And right after that Dodgers series, you get the Oakland Athletics in Oakland. So that's where you can kind of exhale, if you will. You can feel much better about the upcoming schedule. And we're actually a little bit of a breaking news thing, if you will. Might have already said this before. I can't remember. We do so many of these podcasts every single week. But I'm going to be down there in Arlington for the Royals-Rangers series coming up on June 21st. I'll be going to Friday night's game, Saturday's game as well. Not going to be there Sunday because I'm going to be heading back to Kansas City. But we will give you some live stuff there from Globe Life Field. Very excited. Going to go on the road a couple of times this year for the Kansas City Royals, but Arlington will be next. I'm going to be doing our podcast. Probably maybe a surprise podcast, maybe a fun podcast over the weekend if anything crazy happens. But also going to be going on the road 2 more times this season, so should be a lot of fun. But back to that point, the schedule softens up a little bit. You feel a little bit better about who they're going to be playing. And also, this has been a great test for this ball club. Today was a fantastic test for Kansas City. And I think a chance for the fan base to completely forget about Tuesday. Tuesday sucked, man. Tuesday was awful. I had sand volleyball, a little sand volleyball league. I don't know if you guys do the same. I was out there, you get a beer bucket. It's great weather. And I just showed up for our games, and the Royals game's on the TV. And it just put me in a bad mood. Like, man, just watch this game, want to go have fun, but it's on my mind. And what I struggle to do from time to time is just tell myself it's one game. The Royals have had multiple losses this year that have drove me crazy. At the same time, they've had many of games like today where you feel awesome about the game. And they're going to lose a handful of games over the next 10. They will likely lose at least 1 to Seattle, at least a few to New York, and at least a few to the Dodgers. Like, prove me wrong. Again, prove me wrong and make me feel much better about this 10-game stretch. But sometimes those games that really make you angry, and it stretches like this when they're not playing well. It was easy to stomach the loss in Tampa after the 8-game winning streak because they had just won 8 in a row, and they only had a 1-0 lead that they blew. Frustrating, sure, but you can stomach it. When you're not playing well and you're in a bad stretch like this where you look on the horizon and it's the Mariners, the Yankees, the Dodgers, you don't feel too good about it. But days like today now give you all the swagger and confidence in the world going into Friday. Maybe you were waiting till the outcome today to think about buying tickets for tomorrow. Maybe you thought, if they lose to Cleveland, they had a rain out, but they get swept. They're not even close to Cleveland now. And you get Daniel Lynch on Friday against the Mariners, who are red hot. Miss me with the tickets. Maybe you change your opinion now because you're feeling good about them bouncing back, about going back home and taking a series against Seattle, something they couldn't do the last time they were in Seattle facing the Mariners. They get a chance to get some payback a little bit. And it's a Mariners team, yes, has a superstar in Julio Rodriguez. They also have an elite starting rotation. They wanted to see Brian Wu, who gave them troubles, but they'll see Luis Castillo. They'll see George Kirby. They're going to get some tough guys in this weekend series against the Mariners. But it just gives you some juice going into that series. You feel better because they're 11 games over 500 and still have a very comfortable position in the wild card spot. And guess what? They left Cleveland without losing any ground in the Central. We said this on the show yesterday. They might have caught a break. We said Brady Singer was in a big spot. He didn't perform well today. But what would I have told you if I said the Royals would only get 3 1/3 or 3 2/3, 11 outs from Brady Singer? You would have said they got their butts kicked because the bullpen certainly isn't going to do well over those next 5 innings. And that they did. 5 1/3 hitless innings, not scoreless, hitless. Well, yes, scoreless, but hitless inning. Walk 3, but that's a big-time momentum win for Kansas City, leaving Cleveland with a split. They'll come home to take on Seattle in the continuation of the gauntlet. Before we move on to our final segment, I want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day by bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, is this reliever trustworthy for the Royals bullpen? We'll tell you who next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to let you know about Game Time. We just talked about the upcoming series against the Seattle Mariners. We'll preview that a little bit, maybe on Mailbag Friday, or if we don't get a chance to get into that, that's all fine and well. We'll recap it on Monday before the Yankees series. But if you're thinking about going out to the game, use Game Time when you are buying your tickets, whether you're going with one person, multiple people, boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, grandparents, does not matter. Game Time is going to have you covered. If you want to pay a lot of money, they'll show you the best deals there. You want to pay just a little bit, they've got great deals in the outfield seats, the fountain seats. I love sitting out there where you're right by the bar. Really not a bad spot at Kauffman Stadium, but Game Time, they're going to show you all the best deals. So here's what you need to do. Go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Lowest price, last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, the bullpen, as we mentioned, was good today. Not great overall in this 9-game stretch. But today might have been a stepping stone. It might have been a chance for this bullpen to feel good about themselves, to not look their teammates in the eye and know that they blew that game for the starter or for the lineup that gave them runs. You know, you kind of feel like the bullpen was able to walk around the clubhouse today with their chest puffed out a little bit. And that's fine. That's great. And I don't think there was a divide in the clubhouse of, oh, the bullpen guys suck. They can't hold down any lead for us. But they're a wishy-washy bullpen. They are streaky. That is the best way to put it. But we have seen at least an intriguing move by Matt Quatraro with this bullpen. And I almost wonder if it's because of this guy's effectiveness since being called up from Omaha, or it's because of the lack of effectiveness from guys like Chris Stratton, from guys like Serpa over his last couple of outings, for guys like Serpa, for guys like Nick Anderson, even though he was good in the opener against Cleveland. It's Sam Long for me. And Sam Long was really good in spring training. And I remember when the Royals gave him a minor league deal, he really fit the profile of what the scouting department and the pitching department were looking for with their guys. A very high spin rate curveball. And Sam Long last year was not good in Oakland. He had very poor numbers for the Oakland A's. But this is where you can start to feel better about how the scouting department finds guys. Because think about for how many years the Royals would let a reliever go or let a position player go, and they would always catch on somewhere else. You felt like that happened with Yoel Payamps, where he caught on with the Brewers. And I'm sure when the Brewers brought in Yoel Payamps, they thought, well, he wasn't that great in Kansas City, but he was pretty good in Toronto for at least a short period of time. We're going to take a chance on him. And Yoel Payamps has been pretty good for Milwaukee. For Oakland, when they let Sam Long go, they thought, well, he wasn't that great out of our bullpen, and it was a terrible bullpen this past year. And Kansas City thought, minor league deal, let's give him a shot here. And today he was not phenomenal. They tried to squeeze an extra out of him, and I'm glad that John Schreiber came in and got a strikeout and double play to give him a little bit of a boost, because Sam Long was all over the place today. But it was more so about putting him in that spot again. You can remember in the opener against Cleveland, after Seth Lugo gave up the 2-run home run to Tyler Freeman, Matt Quatraro went to Sam Long. And yes, lefty matchups matter. But today, I think there was a possibility they could have gone to Chris Stratton in the 7th. And even though he would have had to face, who was it? I think at least it was Jose Ramirez, and then it was Josh Naylor, if I'm not mistaken. And then maybe David Fry. I think those were the 3 guys he got to face in that inning. And or maybe then it was Will Brennan. I know he struck out Will Brennan to end the 7th inning there. And then he walked Sheeman, was it? Sheeman, can't really remember his name, for Cleveland to open up the top of the 8th, or bottom of the 8th, excuse me. And then they go to John Schreiber, who got 3 outs there. But it was more so of using Sam Long in that spot. They could have gone to Stratton. Jose Ramirez is a switch hitter. Then you have Josh Naylor. And then I think it was a righty, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was. But for Sam Long, getting that spot, and really back-to-back games and doing so, there's a level of trust for Sam Long right now. And prior to his outing on Tuesday night, in which he gave up the leadoff single when he came in. Now, it can't be a leadoff single because Tyler Freeman was the second batter in Holborn in that inning. His first batter was a bloop single. And he also walked somebody later in that inning. And then we all know the Bobby Witt Jr. error brought home 3 runs there. But prior to that outing, he had retired every batter he'd faced. All low leverage spots pretty much. And that was his first high leverage spot. But now this is back-to-back games of Sam Long getting a big time moment. And if you look at some of the early numbers on Baseball Savant, there's stuff to like there. There's a lot of red. His expected ERA, the expected opponent's batting average. Those are all things that are thriving right now. The strikeout rate, the walk rate, good things for him. Now today, not sharp. Not sharp at all. I thought more so effectively wild than anything. But I wonder moving forward if Sam Long has slowly worked his way into that circle of trust. It's also a matter of circumstance. The Royals bullpen's been very poor of late, and there's not many guys you can count on. And really, when your bullpen's struggling, it's not a matter of getting guys back on track or trying new things. It's just rolling with the hot hand. And Sam Long had been the hot hand of late. And today, even though he had the matchups, I think there was a reason that Matt Quatraro said Sam Long over Chris Stratton. I think Chris Stratton would have been a poor matchup for a lineup like Cleveland, and Sam Long provided a little bit more advantage in that said spot. Again, I understand that it was likely down to those matchups, but it's still a huge moment. It's a tie game, and then he did open up the 8th inning by walking the leadoff guy on 4 pitches, but it was, hey, we want to leave him in for one more batter, lefty on lefty. We want Schreiber to get the 2 righties, and that's, in the end, what happened because he got that double play ball to close it out on David Fry. But Sam Long, to me, is an interesting piece. And I almost wonder, the deeper we get into the season, you look at this bullpen and say, who are the trustworthy guys? Maybe it's just a good 2 or 3 weeks for Sam Long. Tyler Duffy, I know, had a couple of good weeks, and then he bottomed out, and the Royals moved on from him. It was that quickly. But when you're trying to find guys you can count on and guys you can rely on in huge moments like that, you can start to see what the manager's going to do. You can start to see the wheels spinning a little bit of, okay, it's a 1-run game in the 6th. It's a 1-run game in the 7th. Here's who we're going to go to. I mean, to me, it's obvious. If they've got a lead in the 8th and the 9th, it's Schreiber, it's MacArthur. And I do think they're going to make a move to make that 6th and 7th a little bit easier, because the next time they have a spot like this against Cleveland or Minnesota or the Yankees, the Dodgers, they can go to somebody and not go, well, let's just hope it happens. But a part of making those trades easier and making it easier on Piccolo, it's guys like Sam Long emerging. It's guys like, Nick Anderson finding a groove. And when you can do that, the bullpen can start to even out a little bit. And let's hope the Royals can do that as they head back home for a 7-game homestand. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available for free on the Fire TV Channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to have another Mailbag Friday as we kick off the long homestand for the Royals. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.